This is the Real Change Wilmington Podcast, episode 61, The History of Busam Ford from Main Street to 73, with our guest today, Jeremy Kaehler.
If you really want effective change, you have to start with the culture. So you have to ask yourself, what is the culture of Wilmington? What is the backbone of it? How do we make it better? How do we hold people more accountable? How do we make people want to be proud and live in Wilmington? And I think that starts at a very young age.
What is going on, everyone? This is your host of the Real Change Wilmington Podcast, Dustin Pierce. Real Change is a positive, constructive, and lighthearted source of local news, events, and resources. And in our podcast, we interview leaders of local organizations to help squash rumors and encourage a greater sense of pride in our community. We have a great episode for you today with our guest, Jeremy Kaehler, who is currently the general manager of Busam Ford and Lincoln on Main Street by the Clinton County Fairgrounds, that is soon to be moving across the street from Potluck Greenhouse on 73 in 2025. A quick overview of our podcast. Jeremy went to school to become a lawyer, but then decided to join the Marines and later be a car salesman after betting a friend that he could sell anything. We joked with Jeremy on the podcast that he has a background in the two most untrusting careers there is, a lawyer and a car salesman, but that his military background helps redeem that a bit. He later then set the record straight, however, and said that anyone, regardless of their career, can be untrusting. That doesn't define their character, and in fact, there are lots of honest car salesmen. Something that I found interesting while talking with Jeremy was just his insights into selling and relationships and just people in general. In addition to the history of the dealership and their plans to move to a new building on 73, we also talk a lot about Jeremy's time on school board at Lancaster City Schools. He shares some fascinating insights on how to manage school funds and relationships between teachers and administrators that he claims helped pass their school levy. So anyone who is passionate about Wilmington City Schools will definitely want to tune in and take notes during that segment of our conversation. What I think you'll love about this podcast is just Jeremy's insights into the importance of creating a good company culture and what it takes to make a real change in our community, not just by treating symptoms, but by looking to find the root of problems, whether that's in a school system, a work environment, or even issues with homelessness and drug use. Our content writer, Molly Campbell, sat in on this interview to take notes for our newspaper. And in her words, Jeremy and I had a bro out towards the end of this podcast, which is a bit longer than most of our episodes, but I had a great time talking to Jeremy, and I hope you have a great time listening to this awesome interview. Without further ado, let's bring in Jeremy and get this podcast started. All right, Jeremy Kaehler, welcome to the Real Change Wilmington Podcast. Jeremy is the general manager of Busam Ford. We're going to talk more about that and your plans for expansion in the future. But before we jump into things, we'd like to start with just getting to know you as a person. So why don't you start by telling us your background and what brought you to Wilmington?
So I'm originally from the Ross, Ohio area, Hamilton, Ross area. I knew Wilmington pretty well just from back in the day in school. We were part of what they call the FABC. So it was Wilmington and Springboro and Western Brown, those schools. And I used to come up here a lot with my grandparents to see the Bengals at training camp back in the day. So after high school, I'd originally gone to a college up north and then transferred into Wilmington. And that was in 97.
Wilmington College.
Yeah. So became a fighting Quaker. Got here, loved the town. It was a smaller town, kind of like Ross was, but bigger. There was more to do, and enjoyed it. Got involved, fraternity and, all that good stuff. Played some sports and loved it. And then shortly after college, I wanted to go to law school and I actually got in, but I didn't have the money for that. So I ended up joining the Marine Corps and walked in a recruiting office here in Wilmington after meeting a Marine in the frat house one night. And so I did that. And then as I was home, one of my good buddies, Chad Taylor, who is, he owns South Shore Marina, and he and his dad owned the marina down, or his father owned the marina down at Cowan Lake. And we had roomed together in college and had a lot of fun. And so when I came back, he was down there selling cars. And after one night of being in a local establishment here and maybe one too many drinks, I proceeded to let him know that I could sell anything to anybody, even though I didn't know what I was talking about. And that started my car career. So I lived here in Wilmington, right back behind the fairgrounds, and was it called Timberglen, whatever's right back there off 730, a new subdivision. And in 2012, I moved to Blanchester. My wife's from Sabina. Both my kids were born at Clinton Memorial Hospital. And I worked at Kaehler Ford for 20 years. And then right at the beginning of COVID, I had left. I was a little burnt out, wound up at a place called Holman Motors out in Eastgate area, Batavia. And after being there for about 3 years, I got a phone call, and it was somebody I had known from Kaehler previously, started talking about the Busam Group buying Bill Marine Ford here in Wilmington, Ohio. And at the time I was thinking to myself, well, who in the world would do that? Right. Cause it was older, kind of run down. So I came on up and I talked to the owners, sat down at Gold Star here in Wilmington, and he kind of gave me the spiel of what they planned to do. And I got a little excited just because it was Wilmington and I knew a lot of people in the area. And, it was kind of, Wilmington's been my second home. Actually, I've lived in the Wilmington area now longer than I have any place else. So I, said, let's do it, and walked away from it all. And now I'm back in Wilmington, still live in Blanchester, but we're making a run of it.
So I gotta make this joke.
Yeah.
You were going to school to be a lawyer, but you became a car salesman.
I know.
Instead. So the two most untrusting positions you could possibly
buddy,
get.
I
you were a Marine, so it does kind of
yeah,
a little bit.
life is funny. I'd lost a bet in a bar is really how that all went down. I had, I don't know if Chad won't be telling the story, but that all happened. So I'd gotten back from, Central America, and we used to always go out to Cowan Lake, and we would take the pontoons out. He grew up on the lake. His dad was a real salt of the earth guy, had built that, marina up, and we were out there, and we were, had some people we knew and some girls, and we were drinking beer, going around the lake, having a good time. Well, we had come back, and there was a big dry erase board in the marina, and it had all this stuff on it. So we erased it, and we're eating alligator jerky, and we're just young, dumb kids having a good time. Well, we didn't realize that was his father's service work for the week. So Chad, he'll tell people nowadays that, hey, I went to the car business to get some sales experience. But really what it was old Mr. Tommy Taylor was pretty ticked off at the situation. So Chad went to grow up a little bit in the car business per se. And when I had gotten back from that deployment, we were down at the Escape in Wilmington and hanging out. And that's when I made my fateful comment of I could sell whatever to whoever, let's use those terms. And I got a call the next morning, and I lived right back here on Columbus Street at the time in a, apartment that we had. And I get this phone call, and I hear, Corporal Kaehler. And I thought it was somebody from my unit, and it wasn't. It was a guy named Dennis Young. And he said, this is Sergeant Dennis R. Young at Mike Kaehler Ford. And as soon as he said that, I thought, oh my Lord, here we go. Chad's down there running his mouth. And so I started up my little Chevy Citation with a screwdriver that I was driving around at the time, and drove down this Route 28 to Milford, Ohio, and walked in, started selling some cars. And, next thing you know, I was on the desk 3 years later and made a good run for almost 20 years down there. So, and then I just never looked back. Still love the law and politics and, all this different stuff. But, I just got ingrained in the car business, and it's one of those industries where once you're in, it kind of just becomes part of you. So
what's your selling technique or philosophy, if you have one?
There's a bunch of them. It's just take care of people. I mean, nowadays, especially nowadays, it changes over the years. Sometimes when I first got into business, it was a lot different than what it was now. When I first got into the business, you were kind of fighting against all the sleazy things that had been done in the 70s and 80s, and then throughout the 90s. But technology's changed that. People are easily informed now. It really is. It's a lot easier in that sense. Where it's become tough is that people are just naturally on guard. Everybody is a WebMD professional now. And so there's a lot of things that you have to kind of walk people through, but it's really just about people is really what it's about. Because at the end of the day, no matter how technological all this gets, and, the microphones and the internet and all this stuff, people still need to communicate one-on-one. And they actually want to do that. But a lot of people don't know how anymore. It's kind of surprising. Just the fact that you and I are sitting here talking right now is kind of an anomaly anymore. People just want to be told something. They don't want to interact until they need to. There's a problem, right? People also want people to be accountable. And that's really what it comes down to now in the business, is just taking care of people, having fun with it. It's not I say to people all the time, if I was spending, I don't care whether it was $5,000, $20,000, $50,000, $100,000, I want to have fun doing it, right? Because it's not fun paying too much for a bag of Doritos. It's definitely not fun paying too much for a car. So I like making that easier and just having fun. Because if you're not going to have fun doing it or enjoy it, then don't do it. You know what I mean? Money's too hard to come by. So
yeah, and time's more important. So fun.
Yeah. So just, it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be all the stuff you hear about or read about, and half of it's not even true anyways, but perception is everything. So just have fun, take care of people, and they come back and you build relationships and you make customers and friends, for life. I've met a lot of people that were customers that I still talk to this day, even after being at different places.
I think for me, like, buying a car is hard because, one, it's a lot of money. And two, I don't do it that often, so I'm not very skilled in it, and it's like so much time goes by between when I buy cars. So I think that hurts, I guess, too, a little bit.
It's a fear,
yeah,
is what it is.
Sure.
And that fear has grown because people are very untrusting nowadays, and they don't like to communicate as much. And that leads to it. But in all reality, you have more information at your fingertips now, sometimes than I can even provide, right? Customers will come in and they know more about the product than I do. It's changing so rapidly. Somebody will come in and say, hey, does it have this option? And I'm like, heck, I don't even know what option that is anymore, So it's really just about finding somebody that you can trust on a personal level, and then allowing them to be the professional and do what they do, because it really is about helping. It's not really, I've never sold anybody anything that they didn't want to buy, not once in my life. And I tell my guys all the time that you're never going to sell anybody anything that they don't want to purchase, right? That's not what salesmen do. Salesmen help people achieve what they want to achieve. And that's key. It really is. More listening, less talking.
Yeah. So last question about that before I get into more about you. I'm just curious, when you were to hire a new salesman and they're green, like they have no experience, what qualities are you looking for, and then how do you train them into becoming a salesperson?
Personality and hard work. That's really what it is, because there is no one right way to sell something, right? There isn't. Now, there are some wrong ways to do it, right? But a lot of that has to do with personality. Number one, nowadays, it's just getting people to understand that it's actually a lot more work than you think. It's not just sitting down, having a conversation, and selling a car. There is a lot more to it than that. And if you're willing to learn that side of it, well, then I can help you with the rest. You got to be thick-skinned. People, I explain this to guys all the time. It's like you said earlier on, oh my gosh, a lawyer and a car salesman, like you're in that, box. Well, you've been trained to think that way, right? And so have a lot of other people, whereas at the end of the day, you and I both put our pants on one leg at a time, nothing's different. We go out and have a good old time. What I do isn't really any different than what a lot of people do, but it's perceived differently. And you have to understand that, because, your doctors, your lawyers, your car salesmen, your, whatever you want to say, are looked at in a different light than some other professions that are really doing the same thing. And that's just trying to help people, get what they want.
Yeah, that's like a fair point to say that someone's label or title doesn't define their character. You could be like a religious person, but a bad person too.
Exactly.
So you could be a lawyer and a good person or so.
You've got good lawyers, you got bad lawyers,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
You've got ambulance chasers, and then you have people that really want to help. You've got, is every car salesman you run into a good person? No, they're not. You'll run into some ringers, but my goal from the position I'm in now is to find people that I can trust, because if I can trust them, then I'm confident that customers can trust them. And really, at the end of the day, a salesman's just an intermediary, so you're going to have a lot of the information you want. They're there to help you out.
That's a good point, because you did say that an important piece is personality, right? So they are just the intermediary. So you want to like working with that person, have fun working with that person, not feel like they're weird or something, you know?
You have to accept people where they're at, and you have to understand where they're coming from, because it's like you said, it is a big purchase, right? I get nervous. Like, here's the funny thing. Most car salesmen are terrible customers when they buy a car. They are harebrained, like we all freak out. It's funny because I can sit here and walk you through something, but there's nobody to walk me through it. So what do? I overthink it 400 times. You know, a good buddy of mine that works for me out there, him and his wife bought a car the other day. And it's funny because he's asking the same questions the customer would over and over and over again, you know, and it's like, well, you're the one buying it. Like, you're selling it to yourself, you're buying it, and you're still having these natural reactions. So a good personality can come in to help out, because you just have to understand that the way you're going to perceive something is different than the way that she is, right? And some people you need to kind of soft glove and help through it. Other people love the interaction, because it's one of the few things you can purchase anymore that you have a say in. When you walk into Kroger and you go to buy that box of cereal, there's nobody there to say, you know, why is this thing, you know, $6? It should only be $4. You can't do that. You either buy it or you don't, right?
Yeah.
And even when you buy a house, you still have a intermediary. You're not talking to the seller for the most part. Now, that does happen some, but it's all going through other people. But with purchasing a car, it's like the last thing you get to actually be in control of, right? So no salesperson can take advantage of you. No dealership can take advantage of you, as long as you're asking questions and trusting the right people.
So I do some selling. I do some selling sometimes.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know, website design companies. So
okay.
I'm like selling people sometimes on things. And I feel like for me and my personality, I don't do a lot of the grunt cold calling anymore, because I absolutely hate that.
Yeah, it's tough.
It would kill me. So luckily I have like good people on my team to do that kind of
100%.
stuff. But when I get on like a call or talk to somebody, one of my big things that I'm always thinking about is what to say and like when to stop talking. You know, like when do I said enough to get someone to like trust me and to feel comfortable and not being overpowering to them, you know, not like just giving them too much information.
So there's a key and a technique to that.
Yeah.
And it really comes down to, like, selling isn't about talking, right?
Yeah.
It's about listening, because your main job is to provide a service and help to somebody that's searching for it, right? So when you have a client or a customer or a lead or whatever it is that's looking at web designing, you've already got them, right? They've either come to you or they're interested in your product. So we know that going into it. So now it's very quick of, hey, what are you looking to do? And then you listen, you know, and then you follow that up with another question. Well, how can this benefit you? When you find out about the person themselves and what their needs and what their wants are, it makes things a lot easier, because if you're asking questions and listening, then they're opening up to you. And the person that is asking questions and listening is always in control of the conversation 100% of the time. You know, if you're just blabbering away and trying to force something or an idea onto somebody, that doesn't work. It never does. Now, you can help walk people through things, you know, and you can do that by questions. When somebody says, I don't know if this is the right thing. Okay, well, tell me more about that. What makes it not the right thing? Okay, great. Well, what makes it a good thing for you? And then you kind of just sprinkle in what you can provide to them. And if you can provide them a service that makes sense, they're going to purchase from you.
Yeah.
So you don't need to ever oversell yourself with something. And that's not really just a sale. That's just in life in general, right?
Yeah.
You know, how many people like other people that do nothing but talk about themselves all the time?
Exactly.
You know?
That's what I have no friends for. I'm just kidding. No, but I think that makes a lot of sense. So, and I think like knowing when to stop talking, one, makes you likable, because like you said, no one likes an over talker.
Right.
So you gain the likability piece, but then also knowing when to stop talking lets them know that you're listening and you're understanding them, so they feel comfortable with you. So they're liking you and they're feeling comfortable.
I can't help you if I don't know you or your situation, right?
Yeah.
Because if I don't know you or your situation, then everything I'm saying, it may not even apply to you. I mean, so I'm just guessing and grasping at straws. And that's where young salespeople make the mistake sometimes. They're trying to force something onto you, and they don't know what's going on. I get into more deep conversations with customers than I do some of my friends and family sometimes, you know, because they start telling me about how 1995, they bought this truck and they tell you what went on, and it could be a good story or a bad story, but you start to understand them and how you can help them. And once you do that, you're halfway there.
Yeah. That was a good talk session. We need to go back to you now. So you said you're married and you have kids.
Mm-hmm.
How did you meet your wife?
Through a mutual friend in Wilmington. There was a place called Samuel Walker's that's now the jewelry store over there. At the time, gosh, it's been a long time ago. We've been married 21 years come November this year, I think. I hope that's right. Yeah. And if it's not, then I'm not going to tell her that I did this little interview with you.
Okay.
But yeah, we met one evening, and then it kind of, I don't know, it was really weird because I couldn't get rid of her after that. I was just that big of a catch, I guess. That's
and so
no, I'm joking. But yeah, we started dating, and then of course, I was gone a little bit because, towers fell and a war broke out. And, so then I was back and forth, but, yeah, we stayed together. And then in 2005, we got married in 2003. And then in 2005, my first daughter was born. And then a year and a half later, our second one was born, 14 months later, actually. But, yeah, so I got 2 girls. And
what did they do?
One is a freshman at UC this year, and the other is a senior, at Blanchester. So, she'll be graduating, and then that's going to be weird because
empty nester. Or?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. It's odd.
It's probably a good thing. Something like being a dad. So
yeah, I don't know. You know how life is. You think you got things figured out and how something's going to be. And then you look back 5 years and you're like, man, it's already been 5 years, but yeah, it's just crazy.
Mm-hmm. So what are your hobbies though? What do you do in your free time?
Man, I'll be honest, since I've been back up here in Wilmington working a lot, there's a lot to do, a lot to fix, a lot to grow. I'm a huge sports fan. To a fault. I really need to fix that.
To a fault, like you're gambling a lot? Or?
No, I don't gamble.
Yeah.
Really much at all. I might jump on FanDuel every once in a while. But that's usually because I introduced my wife to FanDuel a couple years ago, and now she's the consummate pro. But other than, a $5 bet here and there, not really. I grew up, as I told you before, I was coming to Wilmington when the Bengals were here at training camp. So ever since a little kid, I've been a diehard Bengals fan, played sports a lot too, Reds, the Buckeyes. Now my daughter's back down at UC. So I've always been a big UC basketball fan. And then other than that, just hanging out with friends, family, go to some concerts here and there.
Still boating?
What's that?
You're still boating?
I'm not. Boating was fun. It was great. But when the kids were younger, when you have a slip someplace or a dock that you can keep it at, that's awesome. That would be awesome. I wasn't able to do that and lugging a boat back and forth. Not to mention boats they're becoming a luxury, aren't they? You've seen the price of those things. People talk about cars and I'm like, you got $150,000 pontoon boat sitting in your driveway.
That's crazy.
We overly concerned with this $20,000 Fusion here? But no, that's, I do not. Used to do that a lot. I did get a camper because my daughters were in FFA. So the fair is a big deal. We actually, signed on to be a big sponsor, the main sponsor for the Clinton County Fair for a 5-year stint. So, I got talked into a camper and, we do that every once in a while. But other than that, just normal stuff. We'll see what happens in the future.
Yeah. Got some big projects coming up too. We'll talk about in a minute. So
Cool.
I also saw that you're part of the Blanchester School Board.
Yeah. That's been a wild ride.
Okay.
Yeah. So when we originally moved to Blanchester because we weren't real happy with Wilmington schools, and I wanted to get closer to work at the time. So, we were looking at the time, Clinton, Massey, and Blanchester. And Blanchester at the time had just some great academics. And we thought, hey, because we were homeschooling a little bit here in Wilmington, and got out there. And about 6 years ago, that things just weren't going well financially, for Blanchester. And I was kind of that outsider. So it wasn't well received when I started making comments and showing up to meetings. Because Blanchester is it's a small area, and a lot of people there, born, raised, never leave there, which can be a cool sentimental thing, but it also can be an issue for towns, because if you don't ever have anybody with different ideas or different experiences come in, you can't really grow. And that's kind of how it was. And so I started realizing that there were some things, especially on the business side, that really needed to be changed. And so the opportunity came up. I wound up on the school board, and we've done some really, really good things in the past couple years. We got our first levy passed as well. But before we went and did that, we had to do a lot of house cleaning before we went and asked anybody for money. And it's turned out to be well. And Blanchester's doing well now. You know, you have your problems like you do in every school district, but it took a lot of work. But there's a good board out there now. I'll be out there for, I think I'm on the board for another year and a half, 2 years, maybe it's just another year. I have to look. Time flies, but yeah. So it's something I got involved with. I wanted to help out the community. You know, I feel like we've done an above average job out there, and I'm proud of what we've done so far and the challenges that we've overcome. And we've got a great superintendent now. So I think Blanchester's on the right path, and I'm proud to have been a part of that.
That's awesome. Can you maybe just like some highlights of the work that you had to do to fix or clean house, whatever, to get the levy passed? Because we're sort of down in Wilmington, like past 5 times.
I'm always careful when I talk about this because it can come off the wrong way. And I'm a very direct person, which gets me in trouble. Sometimes your greatest strengths are your greatest weaknesses as well. One of mine is I'm just direct. I'm very fact based. I don't act on emotion maybe as much as I should. But at the time in Blanchester, there was a budget shortfall, and they were asking for a levy. And after doing some digging, what I realized was that the major reason for the budget shortfall was the way that the benefit packages were structured in that particular school district. We were only one of 3 school districts in the entire state of Ohio that was structured the way that it was. And years ago, they had gotten into a contract, and these union contracts, they're pretty ironclad most of the time. So once something's in there, getting it back out is not an easy thing to do. And at the time, the benefits were rising. Obamacare had come along prior to this. And, you know, of course, what everybody was sold on Obamacare didn't necessarily come to fruition. It exploded insurance costs. So it wasn't necessarily the district's fault, but it was the district's fault for not doing something about it sooner. But the theory was that, hey, our employees don't get paid what other districts do. So the benefit package was there to compensate that. But what a lot of people don't realize is when you really start talking about business is when you break it down, it's not just what an employee pays, but it's what that business is also paying, right? So let's just give you an example. If an insurance plan for an employee is $20,000, the employee may be paying 10% of that, but then the business is paying the other 90% of that. So when those plans go up to 30 grand an employee, you can do the math and realize, oh, wow, that's something needs to change. And there's only a couple ways to change that, which is by changing plans or greatly increasing the cost to the employee. So it was kind of a minefield, and there was an old school mentality. And at the time, the teachers union and the administration there was a wall there. They weren't getting along. You know, I got there and I was told by some of the older administrators that aren't there anymore that some of the ideas I had were crazy, that these teachers wouldn't listen, that it was a pipe dream. I mean, it was just like, it was almost like a heck with them, like they were enemies. And it didn't make sense to me because I'm like, how does that work? Because everybody should be working together for the common goal, which is to make everybody happy and educate the kids. And so it literally it's funny how some chicken wings and some beer sometimes can solve the world's problems. But I sat down with the head of the union and kind of hashed some things out. And what we realized was that even though we were on completely different sides of this, we had a lot more in common than we did not, you know? And so we started working behind the scenes, coming up with plans. I got with a company out of Cincinnati, asked some questions. I mean, it was a year and a half of just a lot of work on my own, but I was motivated because I was told that it was impossible and it couldn't happen. And so
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, let's see. And it goes back to that communication. So at the time, half the district, like the teachers and stuff, I mean, the comments that were being, I was not a popular guy whatsoever. It was, who is this loudmouth outsider coming in trying to take our health care and trying to pay us? And that wasn't it at all. But sometimes when you're in a certain industry, you're in a box, you only know what you know with what's around you. You don't ever look at it from that bird's eye view. So at the end of the day, we got it worked out, and we came up with a plan, and we negotiated it, and we got it in, and it worked out better for everybody and for the district. And when we got it in place, we saved, I think it was 1.6 million overnight. I mean, just like that. Now that plan's changed again, and we have teams in place that include administrators and staff that can work on this and hash it out and keep it going well. And once we were able to do that, the mentality started to change. And I think that the staff started to realize that, hey, at the end of the day, these guys aren't here to hurt us. They actually want to help us. And then when we changed the superintendent, that was a godsend as well, because he really understood some things. And so now it's on stable footing for right now. Things always change in the future. You know, state funding and the way that things are run are pretty ridiculous nowadays. So we'll see. And Wilmington's facing some similar challenges. We'll see what they figure out. But I think the key too is not having the same people in charge for too long. It's almost like term limits. You know what I mean?
For sure. Yeah.
You just can't have the same ideas and the same go around. I don't think I will not run again. After 6 years, I'm done, because I believe that somebody else that probably has some newer, better ideas than I have will be able to come in and enhance the district. Whereas in a lot of places, you see people that are on boards for, heck, I've seen people on boards for like 20, 30 years. And it's like, once you do that, you're in the box. You don't see outside of it anymore. So I think that's key too, to keep new blood, keep people involved that actually care.
Yeah, for sure. There's I think it's a Steve Jobs quote that says, the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who normally do, or something like that.
Yeah. I think I've heard that before. Yeah. I didn't know what we could or couldn't change. I just knew that something wasn't right. It didn't make any sense. And my logical brain kicked in, and I said, this doesn't make sense. So I started getting vocal about it. And let's be honest, I had skin in the game too. I'd moved there for these schools, and I wanted my kids to have the best advantages that they could have in the area that they were in. And I didn't like this mentality of, well, we're just some small town and we don't have money and everybody's poor and this and that. And it was like, okay, well, that's all good, but what are we going to do about it? How are we going to help lift people up instead of just going with the status quo all the time? So
yeah, that's my probably exact frustration with our schools, is that there's this mentality that our levy keeps failing because money's tight with people. And it's like, but the community voted to pass levies for like child protection services. So our community does support children. We'll pay money. There's just something off here. It's not money. That's the issue.
Yeah. So, I mean, I won't speak to all of Wilmington's problems, but I can tell you that when we were here and my children were here, things were drastically different. They were run differently, and not necessarily better by any means, because I still left to go to a different district, but I don't know how they're being run now, and I can't really speak to that. But I will say that sometimes you just have to listen to people and actually take what they're saying and their concerns to heart. Now, with that being said, what I have learned being on the school board is half the parents out there are crazy. I mean, that's a whole other thing to it. Some of the problems that these school districts have.
But that's any business though, like who deals with the general public.
They are,
everybody.
It is
no filter, but everybody is involved.
One of the big differences that I've realized in school districts is that parenting, it's not just Clinton County, it's probably nationwide, but parenting is terrible. It's terrible. There's no accountability. People let their kids do whatever they want. And now they look at the schools, and it's funny because it used to be, hey, you're there to do a job and teach my child and blah, blah, blah. But now we look at teachers and it's like, well, yeah, that's still your job, but we want you to be the mother or the father or the friend or the disciplinarian. We want you to make sure they're fed. We want you to do all these different things. And when it's not done, we want to come down with wrath. And God forbid that because of what I'm not doing at home, my child is a lunatic. Well, now that's your fault too, because how dare you, you know, and about 90% of the instances I see where there's a big issue, it's a parental issue, or and it's sad because sometimes, you know, you have these kids that there is nobody at home. When COVID hit, we came up with a program. I actually got some of the community leaders together at a church or at the Exchange in Blanchester, because I knew that over half of our district children weren't going to have food. And so we actually got nominated won a C4 award for this, but we started a food program, and it was awesome to see everybody come together because somehow we were popping out. I think it was some like 2,000 lunches a week. It was every day. We had delivery systems set up. And when you went out and you started going door to door and you saw some of the conditions that the kids were in, it was heartbreaking, to the point where I couldn't even do deliveries because even my directness and being a Marine, this and that, man, I couldn't handle. I would leave and I would get teary-eyed, mad at parents. And so you see some of that and you start to realize that there's bigger issues that schools are being expected to deal with nowadays that they never were before. And we don't fund them. We don't fund them correctly.
Yeah.
So it's like, and the funding formulas are always messed up, it seems. So, you know, it's a lot, but if it's something you're interested in, I tell you, man, throw your hat in the ring. And because I believe you can probably make a bigger difference in the area with the schools, even if people think you're a little crazy than you can do in other things.
I can imagine the terrible things people probably said about you, like on the school board, as far as like, oh, I got this like car salesman going to make a deal with the
oh my God, you have no idea.
I can't even imagine what you
had. So before I got on the board, this is kind of crazy. So there was a school board member at the time that let's just say put a perception about himself out there that was a little higher than what it should have been. And we were at a meeting one time, and this was, I wasn't on the board yet, but I was vehemently opposed to the levy they were trying to run, because I knew that the levy that they were trying to run, number one, wasn't going to be enough money to cover the shortfall. And the reason that they needed the money in the amount they did is because that's what the shortfall was going to be, because of the insurance debacle, the benefits debacle. So instead of fixing the problem, they were trying to throw money at it, taxpayer money, you know. And within a couple years, actually, what was crazy, within a year and a half to 2 years, that money would have been gone and they would have had it fixed. And there would have been zero chance of ever going back and getting money from the people again. So it was pointless to pass a levy when it wasn't going to fix the problem, and the money was just going to be spent and you were going to have double the problem in 2 years. So I was vocal about this. Well, about this time, I had bought a used BMW convertible for my wife to drive around. It was cheap. It was not expensive. I got it off one of these rinky-dink lots, had it for about a year. And this school board member stood up at the meeting and started chastising everybody that was against this levy. And then he made the comment, there's people out there driving around in brand new sports cars that are against this levy because they don't care about children or something like that. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
It's all now.
And I felt my wife's hand come down on my leg. And I was already up out of my seat, marching my happy butt up to that podium. And it was like, wait a minute. But yeah, that was the type of stuff that was happening. I got letters in the mail. I got like hate mail. Facebook was a whole other thing. My wife at the time was like, why are you even messing with this or doing this? Yeah. And so it wasn't fun for me at all. But looking back on it now, man, it came together and things are good, and you know, it was worth it. But at the time, yeah, I had some second guesses there.
It's funny. We went to a school meeting last night where they were addressing some concerns the community has. I guess it's been pretty vocal on Facebook recently. And the people who've been the most vocal, had the opportunity to come and speak, they weren't there. It's always the people.
That's how it always works. I know,
it's always the people.
It's that's why I say I'm so direct. Like if I say something to you on Facebook, okay, or in person or something like that, it's not just hot air. Most people use this little device right here as a sounding board. And 9 times out of 10, they got their information off of TikTok or some irrelevant Facebook post. It's not true.
Sure.
They blow up and it's a whole different deal.
So last question about you is just, what's a defining moment of your life that has helped make you who you are or shape your values and personality?
Oh man, there's so many. I don't know that I could name just one.
Probably good.
Yeah. It's, being in the Marines and doing a couple combat tours. I was an infantry guide in the Marine Corps, really woke me up to the fact that Americans in general are very naive, very spoon-fed, very just out of touch with reality. We have it so well. Our poorest of poor are abundantly better off than poor in other countries. The things that we hold dear to us over here are very materialistic sometimes. And it made me way more thankful for the opportunities that we have in this country. And I was always kind of a driven person to begin with, but it really kind of fueled me as far as that's concerned. And then, on the softer side, you can kind of get from my background in this conversation, being an athlete when I was younger, and then the college frat guy, and, being in the Marines, this and that. Having daughters kind of changed a lot for me too, right? I laugh about the day, and I still think it's the good Lord's way of being like, hey, you know what, tough guy, let's try you on with this. So that changed me a bit, and just some of the things I've seen, which I'm not really going to detail too much with, but in the people I've met along the way, I mean, nobody gets anywhere. You have to have drive and hard work to get certain places, but man, surrounding yourself with good people that have good intentions is also a key, because you're never going to get anywhere solely on your own. You'll be the driving factor of that, but a lot of the decisions you make and the people you choose to trust and not choose to trust and have a big impact on that. And, so that's kind of what's shaped me a little bit. And I didn't grow up, I don't want to say normal, but I grew up with very little. I come from a family where I was almost 5, lived in a mobile home for most of our life, didn't have a house till we were freshmen in high school, So I know what it was like to struggle and be on, certain programs, things like that. So it's always kind of given me this fire, because I never want to go back there to that point. And not that I will, but it's always in the back of your head of, hey, keep pushing forward. So yeah, that's a little bit about what kind of shaped me. And then I grew up going to church and stuff too. So I have a strong belief. I'm not a huge, I don't like arguing about religion, because religion is man-made, but very spiritual. I consider myself a Christian, and I believe that we've been given free will, and there's certain decisions that we can make or not make, and a lot's been written too. So at the end of the day, that's really what it boils down to, because we can sit here and we can talk and we can do all these things, but there comes a point in time for all of us. And I realized this at an early age, I think in the Marine Corps, that when it's all said and done, none of that's going with you, right? Like you're dust to dust, or however it is that you've set up for after your soul's gone. But I refuse to believe that that's the end, because that would make life kind of pointless. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, enjoy what you're doing, have fun with people. You never know, what's going to happen. And so that kind of is always in the back of my head. Maybe that's just my PTSD kicking in. I don't know, but that's kind of how I look at things, I don't know.
No, yeah.
That's just kind of how I look at it.
That's cool that you have a very humble upbringing, for sure. I think that helps people develop their character and stuff. And then
it sucked.
I'm sure you had a lot of challenges in the military, and that humbled you even more too.
Yeah. You start to realize that freedom really isn't free. And if you saw, I almost wish that every high school senior had to go spend a year or two in military. And I think we'd have a much different country. I think we'd have a much more respectful, much more appreciative country, because there's a lot of people that do a lot of things that allow us to do things like this that we never considered, because we grew up with it, right? This stuff's normal to us. It's not a big deal. And when that's the case, you don't appreciate things as much, So, I hear, like the food, like people argue about the food shelter here in town, right? And these things. And it's like, oh my gosh, people, there's just things that are worth arguing over, and there's things that aren't, But even, like I said, even our poorest of poor, until you've seen, little kids get into a pit of trash to pick out a cardboard box that may have crumbs on it and lick it, just to have something in their mouth, it's a different scenario. And, I don't think people realize that enough and just appreciate things enough. So that's just how I view it, though. Everybody's different and may look at it differently, but
yeah, thanks for your service for sure.
I appreciate you.
One thing I just want to bring this up because it's just silly. So I realized recently that Loveland, the city of Loveland, their motto is love and life. He made a comment about like having free will or something. And I was like, Wilmington's motto should be, where there's a will, there's a way,
Yeah.
Just something goofy, but very like driven, like let's do something, like.
Well, everything's so negative nowadays, right? It's everybody's got a reason why something can't be done, or it's somebody's fault. And we just went through 8 months of absolute hell in a presidential election, where people are just arguing things that don't even matter because of stuff that's been said online. And it's like, look, man, just chill out. It's this stuff is very easy, and we really overcomplicate it. What do you believe in? What do you want to accomplish with your life? And how are you going to get there? Right? Quit. A president is not your moral backbone.
Yeah.
A president is running a branch of government. It's a businessman, right? That's what they are. The president is the head of the executive branch. That's it.
Not your personal Lord and Savior.
No.
Yeah.
So stop acting like it is. Yeah. And on the other side, for the love of God, stop telling everybody what they need to do and how they should do it and this and that.
Yeah.
People make up their own decisions, because for the everyday American, you and I, we don't care. We got families to take care of and jobs to do and things that we want to achieve. And,
right.
Yet we're all arguing over this negative stuff, and our kids are they're worrying about stuff that doesn't matter, and it's like, just, can we just chill out for a minute? It's insane.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. All right. We're going to transition to Busam Ford. So tell us again how you got connected, and then maybe tell us a bit of the history about Busam Ford, I guess.
So I got connected, like I said, I was at Pullman Motors, and I figured I was going to ride out my career there. Great organization, really liked it. And I got a call one day, and the guy that called me, I had known, but I didn't necessarily 100% trust him.
A car salesman?
Yeah. And that wasn't why I didn't trust him. But yeah, so I said, hey, I'm always willing to listen, but I want to talk to the owner. So I sat down with Joe Busam, like I said, out of Gold Star, and Joe's a little younger. He was, I think, 38 at the time, and he was kind of motivated and persistent. And I could just kind of tell that at the time I was like, I don't know whether this guy is, kind of leading me on or whether he's serious. So I just kind of listened and watched his mannerisms. And what I started to realize was this guy had just enough cockiness in him and enough persistence that he was going to do what he set out to do one way or another. And so I thought, well, as long as you have that, maybe I will, attach my cart to your horse and let's make a run. And so I did. And on the flip side of that, for me personally, it was very intriguing to me. Like, what if we could, because when I first got to Castrucci, we were selling trucks to hillbillies in Goshen, and I was pulling people in from Wilmington and this and that, but we weren't huge like we got. And so I thought, wouldn't it be neat in a town like Wilmington, which is growing, to bring back the Blue Oval per se and have a full service Ford dealership, which we have right now, but a nicer one. It's more accommodating, I guess you could say. And could we make another run like that? And I thought, man, how much fun would that be? And at the time there was a a guy named Seth Caldwell, who is my top salesman. I got him in the business at Castrucci. He rocked it there. He came with me to Holman, and then he came back to Wilmington. And Seth is very flamboyant. He's a trip, but making videos and all this stuff. And he was from this area too. He's from Midland. So it was like, okay, well, if I come, he's probably going to come with me, and this could be fun. Now, I will say it has not been as fun as I originally thought it would be, just because it is a lot of work, and presidential elections are not fun to go through in the car business, because when you look at the charts, it's just always down. It's a struggle because everybody's on edge. They don't know which way it's going to go. Do I spend money? Do I not? Things of that nature. But I thought it was a fun opportunity, and it was going to be really fun to be back in Wilmington. And so that was the reason for that. On top of it, looking at the Busam story, what a great story. I don't know if you've read it on the website. So like, they got their start in the automotive industry back in like 1909, right? Which is still part of Busam Automotive is Busam 1909. We still use that today. Sometimes we use it when we're signing somebody up for a new login. That's their temporary password. It's always Busam 1909. But back then, I'll just refer to him as Old Man Busam, because I don't know if he was John the Fourth or Third, or you know what it was. But he had a repair shop in Cincinnati, Ohio, and Henry Ford was coming through, I believe, with I don't know if it was a Model T, but whatever Ford was, there weren't that many of them back then, but whatever it was back then, had an issue with it. And he was referred to Mr. Busam, somebody that might be able to help him repair his vehicle. And he did. And so Henry Ford offered him, I believe it was a service dealership. And that has now snowballed into, 100 years later, basically, they've had many dealerships along the way. They haven't had Ford for a while though. And so it was kind of neat to see them get their hands on a Ford franchise again. And I just thought, man, that's what a cool story. I mean, how many dealerships can be like, oh yeah, Henry Ford came to my great grandpa and is like, can you fix my ride? And all these years later. So it's pretty daggone intriguing and neat and fun to be part of.
When did they acquire the auto dealership in Wilmington? It was Bill Marine's before. And then
I believe it was official in August of 22.
Okay.
It may have been a year. It may have been a couple months prior to that, but I'm pretty sure it was August of 22. And then I came aboard in March of 23.
And I want to save the expansion for later, but was it always their plan to purchase that and then expand it, or
yes,
did that just come about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. There was the old Bill Marine Ford. I mean, for what it's worth, it's got some nostalgia, but it's not in the best area traffic wise. It's not as easy to get to. The facilities aren't big enough to really handle what needs to be done nowadays. We can't really upfit that place with the electrical stuff needed.
It does seem very retro in there. When I walked in one time, I thought people should be smoking cigarettes inside.
Bro, it's retro. I mean, it's
old school.
Yeah, you walk in there, it's, I'm surprised there's not some jazz playing in the background with some little ashtrays on the desks.
Exactly.
And it's part of that's cool.
It is
part of it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But then part of it's like, geez, Pete's, it would be nice to, I don't know, have an area that was a little bit bigger for customers, or I don't know, desks that weren't from 1910. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff to it, but it's time to upgrade.
So I know I'm going to save these questions for later, but I'm curious. So did the Busam family have to purchase that existing dealership for the name? Like, why didn't they just open up a new Ford and have?
Because you have to have a franchise, and that's where the golden goose is, right? You have to buy a franchise. So, and you don't just get your hands on those.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
That's a rarity. What's about to happen in Wilmington is actually pretty rare. You do not see, especially for domestic brand OEMs, just manufacturers, I guess I should say. You don't see people just say, hey, I want to buy a Ford franchise, and Ford's like, okay, great. And then they're going to buy a building. It just doesn't happen. You usually have to acquire it from somebody that already has it. And the goal typically is when you do see that happen, there's already an existing building, there's something's functional. this is unique because they acquired the Ford franchise. So now that they own that, so Ford is ours.
Mm-hmm.
But on top of that, we're going to build a brand new building from the ground up, which is also a rarity. A lot of places remodel, they might expand, they might do these things, but a fresh new build from the ground up for a franchise is an exciting thing.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's what I thought happened, but I just want to make sure. So my next question, just like we typically ask about the organization itself as it operates right now. So, I mean, it's a car dealership, but can you kind of give us a review of what you guys sell, what you offer?
Yeah, so we have the Ford and Lincoln franchise, actually. So both of them, that's actually two separate franchises, even though it's all under Ford Motor Company. So we have new Fords, new Lincolns, and then a large selection of used vehicles. We have a full service department. The only thing we can't do right now are semi trucks, things like that, but everything else we can. And then we also have parts. So we do have a body shop as well. That's located down in Fairfield, Ohio. That's part of the Busam Group. So we don't have an on-site body shop, but as far as sales, service, and parts, we have it all. So we can get people whatever they need. We're also doing mobile service as well. So that's something when we start up, that's a Ford program that we're getting into. So if you have a recall on your vehicle, you know, and you're up here, you know, doing a podcast or working and it's sitting out back, you can say, hey, you know, come fix this for me. And we'll just show up in our little vehicle, get it done. You don't have to show up at the dealership. You don't have to wait around. You don't do anything like that.
That's awesome.
We also got pickup and delivery for customers now. So if you need something done, we'll come to your house if you're in a certain radius and we'll just grab your vehicle, bring it to the dealership, get stuff done, bring it back to you. So we're making it as easy as we can for customers to be serviced because we also understand that, man, people are busy. You know, I was freaking out today because I didn't get out of work in time to get down here with you. And I'm driving around the block 3 times looking for a blue door on a building, trying to figure out where to go.
Still better.
Like, oh my Lord. So, yeah, so we try to make it easy. We've got a new service manager that I'm really excited about. His name's Anthony Smith. He worked with me at Castrucci for a long time, was a great mechanic, and then he started up his own shop in Blanchester. And for about 10 years there, he was the go-to in the area. Everybody, you couldn't get in to see him. And he ended up selling the entire shop and then was looking to maybe get back in the business. And I had a spot opened. He came in and started teaching guys things within a couple of days, and his luck would have it, a service manager spot came open. And so now he's running the service department there, and he is probably the most honest, trustworthy service guy you ever run into. He shoots you straight, tells you what you need, what you don't, doesn't do things that don't need to be done, but will do everything that does need to be done. People love him. And he's got a huge clientele of his own that still calls his cell phone. So I'm excited about what's going to go on back there in the future. And I got a new parts manager as well, so we can get anything that anybody needs. And then on the sales side, it's as simple as, hey, you know, if somebody is looking for a new vehicle, I know they're expensive, but there's a lot of incentives and rates, things out there. They can swing on in, and if we don't have it, we can get it for you. And then on the pre-owned side, we've done a lot of work to go out and acquire vehicles that people can't afford and get them in there and get them serviced and get them ready to roll as well. So we're excited about the direction that we're going.
What is your favorite car? Do you have a favorite car?
Oh man, I'll tell you, Lincolns are, man, they're so nice. They are, this changes, right? Because there's always the newest and greatest thing coming out. But I think the Lincoln Aviator is probably my favorite car right now. You haven't been able to get them for a little while. I just got some new ones on the lot, and I'm trying to decide whether to drive one for a demo or just leave it alone because they're freaking awesome. I mean, they're awesome. And the technology on them is awesome. And Blue Cruise is awesome. I can go drive the tailgate, see my Bengals now, and hit a button and not even drive the car and just kind of sit there, keep my eyes straight and forward. And it's pretty neat.
I think of Lincolns. So I'm not a car person. Like, I have like my truck and like it's fine. But when I think of Lincoln's my grandpa.
Yeah, I know, man.
Is it like a classier type of brand?
Yeah,
like,
this is a problem a bunch of these old luxury brands had. You know, Buick kind of ran into the same thing when I was down there. It's got a weird moniker for it, and I think part of that is because most people can't afford the luxury brand vehicles, right? Because they're a little more expensive, and so people that end up buying them are the ones that are probably later in life. you know, because when you're 25 and you want a luxury car, you're thinking you want a Porsche or you want, a Benz or something like that. If you have the money for something like that. But on Lincolns, yeah, you see a lot of people drive them. And I said the same thing. I wasn't a huge Lincoln guy until about a year and a half ago. But then you get in one and you drive it and you're like, you know what? Grandma and grandpa had this right. Like this is awesome. So that's why I like it. It, isn't for everybody? No, because I don't expect most people my age to even purchase too many Lincolns, right? Just because they are more expensive, but you get what you pay for. And I'll tell you right now, I know you're laughing. I know it's crazy that I'm talking up Lincoln, but I'm telling you, man, they're just nice. They ride and
didn't they get Matthew McConaughey do some ads for them?
Yeah, I think they did.
Is that what sold you?
Yeah, and Matthew McConaughey's a badass.
Did he sell you on it?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
No, what sold me on it was I drove one for a demo. I jumped in one and started driving it for a demo. And after about 2 days, I'm like, okay, wait a minute. My wife had an Explorer at the time. And I got in her car and I really loved, she had this Explorer ST, which was one of my more favorite SUVs made. And we loved the thing. But then I got in that and I'm like, I'm riding with the lowlifes now here, I guess. This is nowhere near as nice as this demo I'm driving around. Yeah. And we started laughing about it. But yeah, that's why it's my favorite car right now. I can't afford one. But those people that can, seriously, come get one because they're awesome. But yeah, that's my favorite right now. But I got a lot of vehicles I like. When you're in the business, it's hard to pick just one because they're always coming and going.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge sports car fan anymore just because I don't like getting in and out of them and my back hurts. So, but yeah, there's a lot of nice rides. The Explorer is probably my second favorite just because it's a long standing, they're just awesome rides. Always have been. So yeah, if I had to pick one, that would be it.
I'm pretty sure my sister's boyfriend just got a Ford Explorer.
Okay.
For their kids.
From where?
Well, not.
Yeah. Hey, you can get.
They're in Cincinnati.
I don't care. We're right up the road from Cincinnati.
Maybe they did. It wasn't Cincinnati. I don't know. I didn't ask. I didn't have a conversation. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
All right. So what are some of the challenges that you faced so far at Busam Ford since you've been here in the past, I guess, 2 years?
Rebuilding the culture and a reputation. I didn't realize that maybe the reputation of service was as low as it was at the time. And inventory. Now what's crazy about that is getting inventory was tough. Now that we have inventory, we just went through this election cycle where things were much slower. So inventory and then culture, you're only as good as your people. It just boils down to that. And you got to have people that are a little, and this is hard because a lot of people in the car industry are type A personalities, but you got to have people that are a little selfless sometimes, that are willing to do maybe a little more than what their job description requires of them and just do it for the good of everybody involved, which can be tough. And perception, because we do not have that new shiny building on a hill right now. So that goes a lot into it. When you see our dealership, you may think, can they really take care of me? The answer is yes, we can, and we can do it just as well. I think we do it better than others just because of the amount of experience we have in that building now. But, those are some of the challenges. But the good thing is that we're working towards fixing all those challenges. We've been doing a really good job. Our service department's really started to turn around some, and I've got some sales guys that are just fun to be around. Like if you haven't, just jump on TikTok or find their names or something, you're going to be like, okay, what are these idiots doing? But it's funny. Yeah. They're fun to be around. They just want to help people and sell cars. It's a small town. You run into a lot of people. So you take care of people and you have fun with it. And that's how we're going to overcome some of the challenges that we have, equipment and new stuff that'll all come with time, hopefully sooner rather than later, but yeah, we're getting there.
I feel like, not to talk about myself, but I feel like culture is so important, for a company. It makes it's so much better when you come to work and you love the people you work with. They're excellent. They're doing a better job than you could ever do. It's great.
Culture is everything, and it is lost in a lot of businesses. And it's funny because I learned this the first place I was at, because at first I don't think we had a great culture there. I think we formed one over time, but it really is crucial, because if you don't have guys that or gals, for that matter, I gotta be careful just saying guys, but I'm people in general that are all in it together, and working towards the same goal. It's tough. It really is. And you find that in too many industries, and it's a hard one in the car industry because at the end of the day, you do have a lot of people within that business that are only getting paid off of what they actually do. And there's a really good and special thing about that, but it can be a little more challenging to build culture because you do have a lot of different personalities and one person's cup of tea isn't another's, but you can't be more right when it comes to culture. If you don't have a good culture and good people, it's to the point where I'll take a good person before I will somebody that's good at their job. I feel like if you have somebody that really can add to your culture, we'll teach them the rest and they're going to be willing to learn, and they're going to work as hard as they can towards it. So even I'd rather not do as well with a good culture forming than I would, be like, oh, we're rocking and rolling, but just having a bunch of, I don't want to use any bad language, but that's just, you're right. Culture it's everything.
I think my favorite jobs were the jobs I had when I was younger, and it was just a bunch of guys like goofing off at Kings Island, just having a good time at work. Yeah. And I think we get too politically correct at work sometimes, and it loses all the fun.
Yeah, we do. That's part of it nowadays. Like if guys and gals can't, let's put it this way. When I was selling vehicles, we had a couple ladies that were selling, and it was a majority men, but we all had fun and made jokes, right? And I'm not going to say that all those jokes, especially in today's world, would be looked at as appropriate, but it was just all in good fun. We all had fun with it. It was more like, in the Marines, you have so many different types of people. I mean, colors, races, religions, and man, we rip on each other. It was merciless. I mean, and it was fun. And now you've kind of lost that. It goes back to the communication factor. Like everybody's on edge. Everybody wants to be offended by something. So you got to be real careful. And that can kind of dampen culture because it takes away some of the personality of people. And I'm not saying that to build culture, you need a bunch of people that are rude, making, off-color jokes, but
for sure.
There's, nowadays at some places, I mean, you make fun of somebody's shirt and they're in HR talking about how you're harassing them over their clothing. I mean, there are places like that. And some of the stories I've heard are pretty ridiculous. So that does hamper culture because what it does is it puts everybody on edge and then they act in a way they normally wouldn't act.
I think it's a double-edged sword. So like you want to feel safe that you're not going to have like really outrageous jokes or disrespect towards you, but you also want to feel safe to express yourself too. So I think it comes down to safety. Yeah. Within those two bounds, I feel like. Yeah, I think the word safety is a little, not to be like safety, like overused nowadays. No, I know. I'm not saying safety in the triggering way. I'm just saying like, it's to the point now where even for me, I don't know what's safe anymore and what's not. I mean, there's times where, I'll run into somebody I've known for 20 years, a rep comes in and we're even on guard, like, you know what I mean? We won't come out and say it because we're like, well, how bad have you been brainwashed and how bad, we don't want to, everybody's just worried about everything. And it really kind of stinks because it makes it hard to build a culture. And I'm not inferring that you have to build a culture off, bad jokes and ridiculousness. I'm just saying that to go along with your point earlier, it is a little tougher because people are a little more on edge. And then the ones that are, like, I find myself, especially with the guy I was talking about earlier, I'm like, you can't, just be careful. You can't go saying that. And not because I have a problem with it, but because somebody will, and somebody's he was unprofessional. He said something about the cat across the street. Who knows, so hopefully, I don't know, maybe we can all to a better place and just enjoy people again. Yeah. Or we can work for a really small business that has no HR department and do whatever you want. Yeah, that too. So you've done a lot of good things since you've been at Busam Ford. What's some of your most proudest accomplishments so far? Maybe just a recap of what you already said. Maybe. Yeah, it's kind of right now. I think we're putting a lot of good people in place, and we're starting to get things moving in the right direction. And one of the biggest things is getting out there, and I'm starting to see familiar faces again come in. People are starting to come back, and I'm excited about that continuing and even expanding because it needs to be. I heard too many people like, oh, we just drive down to, this Ford place or that Ford place. And it's like, but we have one right here, which is another challenge, is letting people know like, hey, we're here, we're full service, we can rock and roll here. That's another challenge, but that's
so far, I won't say I'm proud of a ton of stuff right now because it's only been a year basically since I've been up here. So I am proud of the fact that I know that we have some good people up here, and I know that our goal and our culture is building, and that we enjoy taking care of people. We enjoy having fun doing it. And to the point where, when you come and you purchase a vehicle from us, yeah, guess what? You're getting your picture taken. You're running up on Facebook. We're going to have a little fun with it. You buy a new vehicle and have one of them drawing pads in the middle. We're going to come up with designs for you. We're going to have fun, doing it, because you should, you should leave there and be like, hate spending money, but if I'm going to, at least that wasn't too hateful.
Yeah, for sure. So we kind of touched a little bit at some points in our conversation so far about rumors, but we usually just ask about any rumors or stigmas in the community that you've heard that aren't necessarily true, but maybe made you laugh, that you want to address.
The only one I really know is the one that popped up on Facebook the other day about zoning 500 acres off 68 and bringing an auto mall or something like that to town. I have no idea where that came from. That's just blatantly not true.
Off of which road? 68?
Yeah, it was 68 and Nelson. I don't even know if people knew what they were talking about, but man, it was crazy.
There was some rezoning going on that property. I think maybe they just assumed, like,
I guess we got tagged to it, and it was like, oh, these horrible outsiders are coming in to build auto malls in the middle of Wilmington. And it was like, what are you guys talking about? I wish we had the money to just go buy 500 of acres of commercial property.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, I think a lot of the other stuff's been squashed. I heard early on when I first got here about, issues with this or that, but those have all been fixed. We put an end to that. We got the right people in the right spots, and we're excited. Our reviews are good, which is nice to see. And we're doing it out of this little nostalgic building right now until we get the new one built.
All right. So now we're getting the fun stuff about the expansion.
Yeah.
So tell us just about the land to move out to 73, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's 36 acres, maybe 38. We have so much data rolling around in my head in the past couple of months. I lose track of some of it, but we're moving out there. Land's bought. Everything's done. If you go out 73, like you're going towards 71, there's a veterinarian clinic out there. I think, call it propane or?
Yeah, on the left side.
Yeah. So right out in that area, we'll be building a brand new Ford dealership, full service one. We're looking at, I think it's around 18 service bays. Also looking to put some big heavy truck lifts in. We did have to build a retention pond. My plan is to turn that into a koi pond or something for people to come out and be able to use. That's the plan right now. I can't say that there won't be another dealership that pops up on the property, because obviously the goal would be to have more. We are not looking at trying to rebuild a King's Auto Mall by any chance. I think that it's nice. We have just enough property and just enough area to offer customers a selection, and they don't have to put up with the hustle and bustle of 275 and getting up and down 28 at rush hour and things like that. So it'll be a little more laid back, a little more country-ish, but still the size of all the others to be able to offer the selection and the pricing and all that good stuff.
So what's the timeline for all of that?
It keeps changing some. There's a lot of red tape. We are closer now than we have ever been, for sure. We are hoping that by the end of the year, shovel hits dirt. Now, that doesn't mean that's going to happen, but if it doesn't, it would be early 2025. And from what we've been told from the contractor is that the construction itself actually isn't going to take as long as we thought. So it could be as short as an 8 to 9 month build, probably going to be around 10. So what we're hoping is that by next time this year, we're full go. Like we're selling, servicing, rolling parts, the whole 9 yards. And there's a lot of other ideas floating around of what we can also do out there. That's a little above my pay grade. I don't have the checkbook in my back pocket to, think about, car washes and things like that. But there's a lot of ideas floating around. But priority number one is to get a better facility where we can do more for more people. And we're excited about it. And hopefully by next year at this time, we're in.
Do you know if there's already like signage planned for 71 to have a Ford dealership sign?
I think the last I heard, we had an easement because we don't back right up to 71. But the last I heard, there was an easement where we're going to try to get a digital billboard sign up out there. we'll see. I think my main goal right now is, man, can we just, let's get this sucker built so that we can get more people in and out. Cause it's getting to the point now where we have people calling up. We have more customers than we do space right now for certain things. So, which is a good problem to have. And we're working through that, but it'll be exciting when we've got a bigger area and we can do even more than what we are now.
And I think we didn't talk on the podcast about the plans for the current building once you move out, but do you know of any plans?
So we've leased that, and I believe that lease is up in August of 25. So if that gives you any timeline of what we're shooting for, trying to do, now we may extend that a little bit if need be. At that point in time, I'm not sure what will happen. I don't know if Bill will turn to something else, sell it. Maybe we release it again, and I don't know, sell golf carts or something. I don't know. That's a possibility too. There's a lot of different things that could be done with it. Or maybe we continue to lease it and use it as a holding lot or an extra service department to recondition used cars. There's a lot of different things, but a lot of ideas for it. But once again, that's probably a little above my pay grade. That's where I'd be looking at the owners like, hey, what are we going to do? What do you want to do? Is there something else we can do? Does it benefit us to do that? Or do we have enough room and do we just run with what we have and let somebody else come in and put a different business in there? Not real sure.
But ultimately, it's not your building. So
correct.
Once your lease is out, it's up to the owner to decide what's going to happen with that. So what is a quote or piece of wisdom that has helped guide you that you like to share with other people?
Oh, man, I got so many of them.
It's the wise old sage.
Yeah, it's funny because there really is just so many of them. One of them that I tell myself a lot to try to keep myself sane is whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. Either way, you're right, because it just comes down to a mentality sometimes. And, the other one's a Marine Corps one that I absolutely love, which is no better friend, no worse enemy. And that was said by General Mattis over in Iraq. And I really like that one because for me personally, I and any of my guys will bend over backwards, to do anything we can for you and life in general. And that's how I treat people. But in today's climate, it's like, if you can't return the same respect, then I got no use for you.
What's the full again?
He said, no better friend, no worse enemy.
Okay.
So basically it was what he was speaking to was when we were going into certain places and Iraq, the whole point was we weren't here to do anything bad or be sleazy. We were here to help you, right? So don't bomb, don't set up IEDs, don't do this. We're here to liberate you. We're not here to hurt the people. We're here to get rid of these idiots that have been suppressing you.
We can be no better friend to you.
Yes.
Or we can be no worse enemy to you.
Yes.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like this. I like that.
And so that's how I look at things personally anymore. Like, I'm all in. I'm all in with people that want it, but that's just a couple. I've got tons, a lot of them are Marine related, so I probably shouldn't share them, but
secret.
But yeah, whether you say you can or whether you say you can't, you're right. And I think in today's world, it's really important, because if you, as a human being, we're the only species on Earth that can actually think about our thoughts, right? We're the only ones that can do that. And so it gives you a lot of power of how you act emotionally, right? Getting mad is a choice. Being sad is a choice. Now our human instincts, our human emotions kind of take over a little bit and force these upon us, but how we act and how we deal with it is up to us, right? Because we actually get to think about that. A dog that is under attack doesn't think about other options or what he's seeing, right? It's a natural instinct.
Yeah.
But for us, we actually get to think about that. So if things are going bad and they're not where you want it, instead of playing the blame game, instead of saying I can't do, instead of coming up with 4 million other reasons of why you're in the situation you're in, if you come up with those, you're right. That is the reason why you're in the situation. You're right. Well, 100%, you're right. However, there's a flip side to that as well. So whether you think you can, or whether you think you can't, either way, you're right. You just have to decide which one of it is you want it to be. And, that I think a lot of times is what I always tell myself, because it's very easy nowadays just to get down. It's like, oh my God, there's paneling on the walls. There's, my lights aren't working. I've got mouse problem over here. I've got a vehicle that just got wrecked. One got destroyed at the fair from a windstorm. All these little things happen, and you can sit there and say, okay, well, this is the reason that we're not doing this or not doing that, or blah, 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 blah. Or you can look at it and say, here's the reasons that we are going to be able to overcome this and do that. So that's just how I personally look at things. But once again, everybody's different. That's just my dealio.
Yeah. So you think you can, or you think you can't, you're right. Sounds a lot like where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, in a way. Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. So you're about that. You're going to join a school board, aren't you?
I'm going to join something.
This is where
So it's a crusade.
Well, I will, I'll donate to your
great. Thanks.
Your campaign.
So what does real change mean to you? And said another way, what would be a positive, constructive, or lighthearted real change that you like to see in Wilmington?
Let me start with saying Wilmington, I think, has done a better job than it gets credit for in the past 10 years. I know that you hear a lot about the roads they put in here, the stuff they did here. I think, honestly, when it comes to communities, from my personal experience and what I hear from friends and family, I think we need to really devote some time, not only to the schools, but children's services, maybe. I think that the biggest downfalls in this community usually revolve around poverty and drugs, right? And when you speak to some friends that are involved with that, it's and holding people accountable, parenting. I think change doesn't happen after you're older. It can for you personally, but once you're 40 years old, like, a lot of the stuff you could accomplish is already passed, right? That does not mean that you can't still do something to affect change, but it really starts with younger. It's culture, right? That's what we were talking about it earlier. We talk about culture. Well, if you really want effective change, you have to start with the culture. So you have to ask yourself, what is the culture of Wilmington? What is the backbone of it? How do we make it better? How do we hold people more accountable? How do we make people want to be proud and live in Wilmington? And I think that starts at a very young age, and I think if you gloss over that, and all of us adults are like, well, we need better trees out there off Rombach, or this or that, or whatever it is, I think you start to lose sight of the real issues. I think one of the biggest things is I don't, and I can't speak on this completely because, like I said, I've only been back in town a lot for the past year and a half, but there are a lot of tweakers that walk by the dealership to the point where I got to make sure vehicles are locked. And I don't understand where that's all coming from. Even Blanchester's cleaned up more than it used to be. Like, I don't understand, like, where are these people? Are they from the community? Have they been let down and they're, in despair? Are they coming from Dayton or Cincinnati? Like, when did this become a big issue? Because when I first got here in the late 90s, like, it wasn't like that. Like, you might have one or two people that were walking around with a brown mag getting sloshed on the side of the road, but it wasn't like it is now. And it'd be really nice to know, like, how did it become that way? Where did it all come from? Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. You might have a better insight on that, but so to affect change, I think you have to kind of start with the basics of how did the problem start? Like, how did these issues everybody keeps talking about begin? And once we know how they began, then we got to kind of cut that off and then help with what has already been done, instead of always having the tail wag the dog, right? Everybody wants to react to something that already is. Well, we got to change it. Well, once the culture's there and that ball's in motion, it's really hard to change. I tell guys all the time, even at the new dealership here or new salesmen, it's like your own business, like a steam engine, right? It takes so much time and effort, and coal and shoveling in there to get those wheels a rolling. But once they are, and you have a moving freight train, who's going to stop that sucker, right? It's hard to stop. But we always try to stop the train and instead of trying to figure out how it got rolling in the first place.
Yeah.
If we take away the coal, guess what? You can't get the train going, so that's kind of how I look at it is, and it may be just my analytical brain working, but how do you backtrack? How do you say, hey, what started causing this? Let's stop trying to treat the symptom and let's find out the root cause and let's knock that out first. And I just don't think that a lot of times, especially in small towns, because they're so ingrained with the same leadership and the same ideas that never change. We always try to react instead of being proactive. If you got a school system that needs help, we need to find out where are the issues at and what's causing those issues. And let's start there. Let's not try to dump money into covering up the problem or taking care of the problem after it's already existed, right?
Yeah.
It's great to feed people, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but where are people coming from? How are they getting here? Where's the drugs coming from? And that's always been my frustration, especially with the police departments in town. I mean, geez, Pete's, man, when I was in college here, literally me and my buddies could point out where this was, where that was, what was going on, I mean, there used to be a literally crack house on the corner down there where the Manhattan Ave was. Everybody knew that.
Yeah.
Every college kid knew that. I mean, you knew it. I mean, there were people that had gone in there. They knew that you could have wiped a problem out like that in a heartbeat, but you didn't. Why? What are we doing? The same way with some of this, it's just like, I don't know. It's easy to sit back and armchair quarterback things.
Sure.
When you're not actually in the fight. And I hate to do that, but it does make you question.
It kind of goes back to what you said with the school board situation. They want to throw money at a problem instead of getting to the source of it, which would eliminate the problem to begin with.
Right.
So,
because sometimes getting to the source of the problem it causes a lot of tough conversations.
Yeah.
Causes a lot of emotional politics, and people try to avoid that because we don't communicate anymore. We want to throw an idea out there. We want to get people on board with our idea and we want to run with it instead of saying, hey, you know what? Why don't we dig deeper here? Why don't we really find out what's going on? Why are there so many homeless or addicts or stuff like that all of a sudden in the middle of Wilmington? Why do we have, my brother-in-law is a lieutenant at the fire department, and some of the stories you've heard over the years, it's draining. These guys didn't sign up, and neither did your police officers to go pick people up that are freaking OD'd in their car with their kid in the passenger seat. What's caused, like, how did we get here? Where's it coming from? Where are we getting it? I mean, we can't run some sting operations. I mean, my Lord, maybe I watched too many TV shows. I don't know, but it just seems to me like more could be done if we really wanted to,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
But there's going to be that backlash, someone who addresses the issue, kind of like you experience when you address the issue, like to change a system like that is going to take the emotional politics and take all that. And
it can. I guess I'm burnt out on the emotional politics. I'm so.
I mean, you served your time, but I'm saying
I'm like, look,
yeah,
certain things are how they are. You can call it conservative. You can call it, progressive. You can call it whatever you want.
Yeah,
right's right, wrong. It's just that simple. This country was formed with some very, very basic set of principles that we as human beings try to pervert, and we just get it, 250 years later, where, how do we get here? Look, everybody's got certain rights. That's what this country was founded on, and your rights do not trump mine, right? So why are we having conversations and spending money on things that don't matter? The bottom line is my daughters have a right to privacy in the bathroom. I don't care about your feelings. I don't. You have your rights. She has hers. So why spend $5 on changing a sign? Why do any of that? It doesn't just stop. Let's start looking at issues and saying, hey, here's the problem. And it's going to be hard to hear. Here's what you're doing. And you may not like how I'm telling you. maybe I'm not telling you in the right way,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, here's the issue. Let's attack the issue and let's stop debating on how nice we have to attack the issue. I mean, the issue is the issue. So figure out how to frickin' solve it and let's move on. And then everybody will be happier in the long run. So
Yeah. Not to counterpoint that, because I totally agree with you, but I feel like I've been in situations before where I've been too aggressive and like become the bad guy, which is like, I think something to be wiser about. Like, you can't be too mean because then you're going to be, seems a problem. But what I was getting at is that there's this quote about when you squash people, you don't get agreements or something, you get like a rebellion. And I see that too in like politics, when we just try to squash some people and they just like rebel. So you can't just be like
and I would agree with that to an extent, but I would also say this, a counterpoint to that too is that I think for too long people have been scared to speak up and say anything because they don't want to be labeled or looked down upon. And it has caused the situation that we're in now because you're talking about tact is basically what you're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah.
And tact, you know what the Marine Corps calls tact? They say, they'll tell you that tact is being able to tell somebody to go directly to hell, but by the time you're done explaining it, they're so excited they can't wait to get there, right?
Yeah.
That's what tact is. And yes, people do need to be more tactful. The problem is that for a long time, using tact with people got you labeled. Like it wasn't that you didn't want to dump money into a food pantry. It was that you hated poor people. You know, it wasn't that you never were able to get to that second step of, hey, no, that's not the case. Here's what I need you to listen to is that we aren't helping the situation. We're fostering it. Right. And so you're right. There is a little bit of a fine line there, but I think what you've seen not only in Wilmington, but across the nation is that you've seen one group of people that were like, hey, you got to be tactful about it. The other ones that were like, okay, we'll try to be tactful about it. Then things started to get bad and it's like, hey, we're not going to be tactful about it. We're just going to tell you how it is. Well, you can't do that because you're this, and that. Well, don't call me this, and that. That's not the case, you know, and then it gets to this fever pitch level and boom, you know, it's really odd how it all works. So it is a gauntlet sometimes.
I like your Marine quote though about I can either be your best friend or your worst enemy. So it's like, I'm going to be reasonable with you. I'm going to try to engage you attack. But if it's not going to work, like, okay, I tried. Like, I'm not going to worry about it anymore.
100%. Yeah, that's how it is. And basically what you're saying is you can attract more flies with honey than you can vinegar, right? And there is a place and time for that. You know, there is a place where you need to explain things certain ways, but there are also certain issues that are just illogical. You know, I mean, explain to me when you say, hey, let's change something around. Well, explain to me why there's such an issue with Wilmington. Like, I don't know, after all this time and all the money and all the tax dollars have been spent, how there aren't better programs in Wilmington for disabled children, you know? I mean, Blanchester, we're rock and rolling with. We got people coming to our district, right? Because there is no care for them here. It's very, very, very little. You hear all these crazy stories. It's like, well, what are we spending our money on? How do we change this? It's not just adding more teachers, which is probably part of it, you know, but are there other things we can be doing? And you ask these questions, you get into it. Like we changed superintendents out at Wilmington and it was stunning.
Blanchester,
I'm sorry, out of Blanchester. And, now we are, she's basically our assistant superintendent. These guys are finding government grants. They're finding ways to do things. They're rolling up their sleeves and they're going to work and they've made things better. And I'm not sure that happens across the board everywhere. I think sometimes there's a lot of talk, but not a lot of action. I think there's a lot of, you know, this is what should be done. Okay, well, let's sit down. Let's spend a couple evenings hashing this out. Let's find a way. Are we really putting in the work or are we just going through the motions? And I think that's the difference sometimes. And when you get to the point where you think somebody's just going through the motions, it's hard to use honey anymore. You start throwing the vinegar, right? You lose some tact. You start getting more forceful. And people don't like to be called out. People don't want to be held accountable anymore. And it causes a lot of problems. Just admit what you are, you're not doing, and move on, you know?
Yeah.
It's like if I got a lot tech that wrecks look, I don't care that you wreck the car, but you come tell me immediately, take accountability, and then we'll figure it out. Don't go park in a lot trying to hide the damn thing, waiting for somebody else to take care of the problem, or come up with some story. Just be like, look, screwed up and I don't know how to fix it. Got myself in this situation. Okay, let's put our heads together and we'll figure it out. But don't not do that. And then somebody finds out and calls you out and your excuse is, well, if they wouldn't have cut down all those trees out there, the sunlight wouldn't have been shining through and I would have seen the freaking telephone pole. Like, what are we talking about? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Just avoiding accountability.
Yeah. That's really what I think a lot of it is.
Everyone wants everyone else to be accountable, but they don't want to be accountable themselves.
Brother, that's how it is. Everybody wants to point the finger and tell you how you're not this, you don't like, whatever it is. And I think a lot of people, they're kind of done with that. I think they're like, look, I got to wake up every day and be accountable for myself and for my family and my husband or wife and my kids and my job. And I don't get to just call you a name because and people are kind of sick of that. Yeah. So I'm not telling you to go rogue and go crazy if you want to run for the school board and be a complete loudmouth.
I'm not going to run for school board. I'm not going to do that.
But just remember too, there's also a saying that says the squeaking wheel gets the grease, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes without somebody stepping up and really forcing some accountability, there will be none.
Very cool. We could talk for hours on this.
Yeah, probably.
But what is the best way for people to get in contact with you or visit your establishment if they want to learn more?
We are right down the road from here, 1182 West Main Street, Wilmington, Ohio. It's BusumFord.com. Our main line is 937-382-3858. Call us up. Come see us. We'll do all we can for you. I don't care what it is. So whether we got to come help you out at your place, help you out at our place. If you're in the market for a new or pre-owned vehicle, we've got them. We've got a big selection. And trust me, we're motivated to move everything. We got to, make a move here before too long. So we are probably more motivated than any dealer in the state of Ohio to turn inventory as quickly as possible. Last thing we want to do is be sitting on too many cars, and I'll be calling you guys up. Hey, I need some help today. Can you drive vehicles down 73 for me? So
be fun.
Yeah, and you'll see us out in the community. Like I said, we sponsored the Clinton County Fair, so we spent a lot of money, time, and effort doing that and trying to take care of the kiddos in the area, which is fun. And if you get some mail or anything like that from us, don't throw it away. Read it over.
Appreciate what you do in our community.
Hey, thank you guys.
Well, that's it for our podcast today, folks. I hope you enjoyed our interview with Jeremy Kaehler at Busam Ford. If you have any more questions for him, feel free to reach out directly. If he'll talk to us dorks, he will certainly talk to you as well. After all, we are a community of empowered individuals. If you want to get in touch with Real Change Wilmington, you can contact us on our website at realchangewilmington.com, visit our Facebook and Instagram pages, or grab a free copy of our local newspaper at Kroger, Sam's Meats, and Fiesta Veracruz. We also currently send our newspaper direct mail to over 2,500 Wilmington residents. So if you want to help us cover our printing costs and advertise your local business, event, or job posting, please email us at advertise@realchangewilmington.com. With that, I'm your host, Dustin Pierce. Keep it real, Wilmington.